So he says, وَلَيْسَ الْإِسْتِنْجَاءُ مِمَّا يَجِبُ أَنْ يُوصَلَ بِهِ. This is an important milestone, in my opinion, of the Arabic student being able to kind of go up a level. In the beginning, we learn past tense. We learn he threw it, he throws it. But these all fall under, these are what we call ma'loom. This is the active voice. So if I say ضرب زيد عمرا, if we say Zayd hit Umar, we know that Zayd huwa al-fa'al wal-fa'al ma'loom. Zayd is the one doing the action and he's known. We know who he is. So whether it is Zayd hit Omar or Zayd is hitting Omar, he's doing it now in the present tense, this all follows under what we call in English, this is the active voice. But as I said, reading, especially without the harakat, without the tashkil, initially is difficult. And one of those difficulties is knowing when is it going to be active and when is it going to be passive. So active, we said, is what? Ma'loom, and majhul is going to be the passive. Once you gain the ability to recognize when the author is applying or utilizing the active versus the passive, this is a good sign, right? You're able, and this is what will allow you to be able to read texts with a greater sense of confidence. So our first example here in the first sentence, وَلَيْسَ الْإِسْتِنْجَاءُ مِمَّا يَجِبُ أَنْ يُوصَلَ بِهِ. يُوصَلَ is يُوصَلَ بِهِ. Let's strip it down. What is going to be the root of it? Right? So waw, sad, lam. So if we were to take the form of af'ala, like as in aslama and ahsana, and we apply that to our root of waw, sin, and lam, in the present tense, because again, this changes, we're going to get a ya and then a waw. So we're going to get yusilu. Yusilu is going to be the active voice. If we change this to a fatha, just change the middle letter from a kasra to a fatha, then we get the majhul. We get yusalu. Ma'loom, yusilu. And the majhul, yusalu. Now, the real question is, okay, great. We now know active versus passive, but what is the implication for this? When we want to say it is connected, we are using the passive voice, but in the present tense. Now, a lot of times we're used to the passive voice in the past tense. So for instance, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. And when it was said to them, was in the past, said to them, don't make fasad. Or بُنِيَ الْإِسْلَامُ عَلَى خَمْسٍ. Prophet ﷺ said what? Islam was built on 5 things. But there's also a present tense passive voice. And that is exactly what we have here with yusalu, or specifically in the sentence, and yusala bihi. So what is going on with that? Why would an author, what is happening when the active voice and the passive voice are being used? So it does not mean that the action has already been completed. Some people have the misunderstanding that, oh, if you're using the passive voice, it's like it is connected in this case. And yusala bihi, it is connected. Because of the ed, at least in English, our tendency might be to think that the action is completed. The only time the action is completed is if it is what? Past tense. If it's not completed, then it means it's ongoing. So this is where you have to kind of rearrange a little furniture in your head in English when we are thinking of these things. So it does not mean the action is already completed, but rather the action is happening right now, repeatedly or habitually, or is in a state of ongoing. And therefore, we do not explicitly mention the doer of the action. In the active voice, the doer of the action is known, and therefore the emphasis is on the doer or the subject. So when it's in the active voice, the emphasis is going to be on the one doing the action. Allahu alladhi khalaqa as-samawati wal-ard. Allah is the one who created the heavens and the earth. In this ayah, in this sentence, the emphasis is on Allah, and secondarily, what He did. As you can probably guess, in the passive voice, the subject is not mentioned explicitly. So it's not directly mentioned. This has as the result, as you can guess, it places the emphasis on the action and not the doer of the action. And we want to, again, ask the question, okay, great, but how is that important? So, turning our page, why passive voice? An author might want to use a passive voice for a few common reasons. To remove focus on the doer. So in this case, Ibn Abi Zayd is talking about doing wudu. And he's talking about doing wudu. Therefore, whoever does them, it is not important. Whether we're talking about the Prophet ﷺ doing it, Abu Bakr doing it, me and you doing it, potentially anybody doing it, it doesn't matter. And therefore, the subject is not explicitly mentioned. It's implied because somebody's going to do the action, but whoever does it doesn't matter. What matters is how is the action being done. So that is one of the reasons why you will want to use the passive voice versus the active voice to emphasize something that is going to be universal. This is why particularly in books of fiqh, you learn the ahkam, you learn the rulings for things. And those rules are going to be what? Universally applicable. So that's one of the functions of the passive voice, is to be able to speak on a thing, to explain it, particularly the mechanics of it, how it may work, and removing the specificity of the doer because they are not really applicable. Now, in cases where that is, then you will find they will use the active voice. Where the person doing it, then it does become important. It's not about who is connecting istinja to wudu, but that you should not, no one should connect the necessity or the act of doing istinja or istijmar to wudu. So the passive voice allows for ideas, concepts, or rulings to kind of stand on their own or stand isolated. And it's to emphasize the rule or the state.